Okay, there it is. Yep.
There you go.
There you go.
All right.
I knew it had to say it somewhere.
Yeah.
Shall I call the meeting to order?
Well, now that you're recording,
I have a
yes.
little gavel like.
Now, remember, we're all being recorded during this, okay? It's
Yeah.
open mic. So, welcome everyone. This is the September meeting of the Pine Hills Neighborhood Association. It is our first in-person meeting since the pandemic began. It's also our first hybrid in-person Zoom meeting, so we appreciate your understanding should there be any further technical issues. Anyway, we have a lot to do this week, so we normally start with welcome announcements. I've done welcome, and I am going to turn to Carolyn Keith for something to say.
Yeah, I just wanted to briefly say that many of you may know I had emergency surgery last May, and I just wanted to thank and acknowledge everyone who supported my family and I during that time, and especially my husband and I both want to thank Leah for all the tremendous work that she did to coordinate all of the help. So thank you. We thank you so much, and we thank everyone. So thank you all.
Thank you. It's very nice of you.
Thank you.
Well, that's a nice way to begin, and it's good to see you back with everyone else here. and
It's a great community.
good. Yes. So we're going to start right out with our guest, Andrew Neidhardt from Walkable Albany. He's going to discuss the Washington Park Complete Street Study, as well as a number of other topics, and of course, Walkable Albany's current projects.
Sure.
So that's Andrew.
Okay, thank you. Hi, everybody. To everyone who I know, it's good to see you. See folks in person who I haven't seen in a long time. And for those of you who don't know, I'll introduce myself and our organization. So I'm founder of Walkable Albany, and we started several years back as an organization to promote safe streets and walkability in the city of Albany, which takes a number of different forms. There are sort of two main aspects to it. One is on the development side. We support projects that are walkable in terms of apartment buildings, commercial development, things like that. And then on the pedestrian safety side, we advocate for improvements to sidewalks, crossing, legal changes that will make pedestrians safer. So that's what we do. We are an all volunteer or member organization. We meet monthly. I'll give you our meeting date and time at the end. And we're always looking for new folks. So if it's something you're interested in, feel free to get in touch with me, and I'll get you connected with our various different projects. So I'm mainly here to talk about the Washington Park study, but I thought I would just quickly go through some of the other things just so that you're all aware of some of the issues that we're working on at the moment. We are similarly kind of going through this, getting back into in-person meeting, sort of rebuilding that muscle that we all lost. We had a lot of in-person meetings, and then we switched to Zoom. People definitely got zoomed out. So we started.
Oh,
Looks like we lost them.
yeah. Yep. Are you going to tell them?
I can text John now. I just texted him.
Okay, thanks. I tried to chat somebody, but I'm not really good at doing it.
They probably realized because the six of us are still here, but they're all gone. So
Okay, so who are you? What's your name again?
I'm Justin. I actually own. I've known John for probably 3 years now, and he kind of speaks to me a lot about a bunch of rental properties we own in the area. We own like 40-something properties in Pine Hills. Myself.
Oh, you're the guy. Oh, yeah. You're very young. Yeah.
Thank you. I must look younger on
emailed
camera.
someone about- Huh?
I said I must look younger on camera.
You look very young on camera, yeah. So, yeah, you were very concerned about all the issues
safety.
around.
Yeah, so myself and my partner, we own about 40 properties in the area. A lot of them are rented to students, some of them are rented to non-students. And obviously everyone's been concerned over the past 2 years, probably since the pandemic began, about safety. Safety and crime, I hear all the time from all of our residents. And now, parents are calling me for some of the students. So it kind of led me a year ago to reach out to John and Owusu and some of the other stakeholders in the area and start having conversations about how can we make, the area safer and better for everybody.
Great, very good for you. Congratulations. I hope it's getting somebody somewhere. I mean,
Yeah, I think it'll
it's
take
a hard
lot-
nut to crack, I think.
Yeah, it'll take a lot of us to make a change, but over time, if we're loud enough about it, hopefully we can get better police presence in the area and more support from the city and things.
Yeah, Mid-Madison has been kind of difficult to get our fair share of resources over the years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My business partner actually graduated from SUNY Albany in 2009. So he was a student here in 07, 08, 09, living off campus. And he's seen the area go down quite substantially from a quality standpoint over the last decade. So it's worrisome and everything, and hopefully we can turn it around over the next year or 2 or 3 years or 5 years, or at least stabilize it for the most part, so everyone can feel safe, going to the Cuckoo's Nest and going to Washington Tavern and eating where they want to eat without any type of safety concerns.
Absolutely. So congratulations for actually reaching out and being active about it.
Yeah, thank you.
I think it's great.
Let me call John now and see. Oh, there they are. It looks like they're connecting.
Oh yeah, I see something here. It's recording.
Yeah.
Virginia, can you hear us?
Yeah,
We're back.
Sorry.
Okay, everybody.
Okay, well,
Bear with us. We're now.
that's okay. It was fascinating from the get-go. It's too bad it interrupted there.
Everybody, if you could mute for a second until we get this going again. Now, help me out here, group. What do I want to do?
Spotlight, but how do you
So
do
you
that?
right click up on where we are. Yeah, or you press the little dots. Yeah, spotlight for everyone. For everyone to see. Should be back.
Okay, and
Okay.
everything that we went before was recorded, we believe.
Yes.
Yeah,
We're
looks like
back.
it's-
We said there might be technical difficulties and we delivered on that promise. Just remember that.
I'll
Yeah,
take
we're
it
back
as
to
a
Walkable Albany.
take it as a sign that I was being too verbose.
Yeah.
So,
Except we got that line on the screen.
Well, we can ignore
Oh, okay.
Anyway, so I hope you all heard about Walkable Albany, but if you didn't, happy to give you more information later. Beg buttons. So we're still working on this issue, working on moving toward legislation. The council back in February unanimously passed a resolution, basically expressing the common council's position that we should be having pedestrian signals at every.
it. Bang button.
Yeah, so that's what I was in the middle of. Thank you. So beg button is basically the idea, the buttons that you have to press to cross the street. It's a beg button when all of the pedestrian signals are disabled until you press a button. So basically the idea is you shouldn't be able to stand at a corner all day and never get a walk signal, because basically it causes people to have extra long waits to get their walk signals. It confuses people who aren't from out of town. They're inconsistent. In the winter, they're usually inaccessible completely. And so if you can't get to one, then you can't cross the street legally. Oftentimes they break and then you, again, can't cross the street legally. And so it just causes confusion for everyone. So what we're working been advocating for is for there to be a pedestrian signal as part of every green light cycle. So when the light changes, give a pedestrian signal every time. The downside to that is it may cause a 2 or 3 second delay for the traffic signal. So it may make it slightly longer, but for us, that seems like a fair trade to make sure that people can have walk signals. So we're working toward legislation on that as a follow-up to resolution. Speed limit. So you may have read about the governor recently signed a bill allowing municipalities to lower their speed limits from 30, which was the prior mandatory minimum, to 25. And so we are supporting that. That's something that Leah helped to get the state law changed on through the New York Bicycle Coalition. Did I get it right that time?
It's bicycling, it's close
Bicycling.
enough.
I always do. I always do.
It's fine, everybody does.
Okay, that's why I do it. But so my understanding is that there needs to be a study done before that can be fully implemented. So it may take some time, but we are supporting that. The main reason behind that, just to give you a quick pitch, if you're not convinced, there's 2 in my mind. One is that there's a huge safety difference between 20 miles an hour and 30 miles an hour, especially between 20 and 40. That your odds of surviving if you get hit by a car at 40 miles an hour are 10%. Your odds of surviving if you get hit at 20 are 90%. And so there's a really big difference between 25 and 30. And so it's something we really support. The other thing is it will hopefully, if that is the speed that our city is designing for, it will allow us to design our streets to be more appropriately designed for lower speeds. So right now, when traffic engineers are designing streets, they have to make sure there's big enough curves so that people can take them at 30 miles an hour and feel comfortable doing so, which requires design changes that encourage people to drive faster than they might have ordinarily driven, which actually has a perverse effect in causing people to drive fast. So it's a good change. It would be a start. It's not a panacea by any means, but it's an important statement that we feel pedestrians, bicyclists, other users are just as important as people getting places on time. And of course, anyone who's lived in Albany a long time knows a lot. You're going to get to a red light pretty soon anyway. So there's not a huge difference between going 25 and going 30 when you're the driver, but there's a huge difference if you end up being hit. What else do I have on here? Shovel Brigade is coming back. So we've been focusing our Shovel Brigade on the Lark Street area because that's where we've gotten the most volunteers. If anybody's interested in coming out and shoveling with us, we go and shovel crosswalks and sidewalks after it snows to try to make sure things are clear. We're also happy to use the infrastructure we have set up for that to do other neighborhoods. We haven't had as many volunteers from other neighborhoods, so it hasn't sort of taken off in the same way, but certainly feel free to reach out. We're also hopefully partnering with DGS to get a little more muscle motor power in addition to our muscle, and have a snowblower to help with that. The city's been very helpful. Just a couple other quick things we're working on. Swan Street, there's been a lot of concerns about traffic safety over there. And so we've got a committee that's sort of working on down by the Empire State Plaza. I know that's probably a little bit less relevant for Pine Hills, but that's one area. And then Clinton Avenue, especially in the last 24 hours, has been sadly a area of focus for us. If you didn't hear, somebody was hit by a hit and run driver last night, yesterday evening, I should say, and killed a 31-year-old woman, I believe. Made all the more sad by the fact that it's actually in the middle of being upgraded. They're putting in new crosswalks and pedestrian ramps right now. But in the process of doing that, and this is a common thing for construction in the city, all of the pedestrian infrastructure on Clinton Avenue is blocked. So if you want to walk on Clinton Avenue right now, there's no safe way to do it while they're upgrading it, which has been for weeks. So I walk across Clinton Avenue every day, take my daughter to school, and there's no way to get in or out of the crosswalk. You have to just walk into traffic. So that's at every corner. And so I don't know that that played a role in that particular case, but it draws attention to a larger issue we've had on our minds, and trying to think of a solution we can hope to propose. Just for construction generally, if you're blocking a whole sidewalk, there needs to be a pedestrian path, whether it be with cones or barriers or something. That's what most other cities do. So that may be a new issue that's coming up. So that's most of our projects that we're working on. I thought I would speak a little bit about the Washington Park plan, and maybe hear from you all some thoughts also. I was not the one for.
We did share our memo on that.
Yes.
And for Pine Hills members and others, if you want to see the Pine Hills memorandum on the park study, it's on our website, Pine Hills Neighborhood Association, pinehillsmi.org. So go there and see it. We focused on the area closest to us, the closing of the Park Lake Road and the intersection of Hudson and South Lake. So,
Right.
but one of many recommendations.
Right.
But in general, we were laudatory, grateful that the study has been undertaken and that there's a chance to comment on it. It's still in draft form.
Correct. Yes, still in draft form. It's dated May. I think it really came out in June or July. But yeah, it's in draft form. It did request additional comments from people before it's finalized. For folks who don't know, this is a study that's looked at Washington Park and a lot of surrounding neighborhood streets for a complete street study in terms of, it was supposed to be a study to improve safety in the park and the surrounding streets is the idea. And Walkable Albany's position too is very similar in that we're mostly very positive. You know, there's a lot of great things in here that if these happened would be wonderful to see. You know, these would be big changes for the park, a big step in the right direction. And so we're really happy that that's happening. The study identifies how much it would cost to do these things. And I think it's around $6 million for all of them. Some of them are more expensive than others. So that's sort of the next step, right? This is a study, and I've lived in Albany probably fewer than most people here, and you've all probably seen studies that come to nothing.
Oh, yes.
So,
Many.
so we have to work to make sure that doesn't happen. That's sort of going to be the next step, is keeping the pressure on to make sure that we don't sort of lose the energy. We started talking about this, you know, a couple of years ago now. I came and spoke with you all and a bunch of other neighborhood associations. And the thing that I took away from all those conversations was that the status quo is unacceptable to everyone. The way the park is now, nobody really likes it. And so, you know, that to me, I was a little bit disappointed that the main recommendations of the plan with respect to traffic flow are essentially to keep it the same, with the exception of closing off the Lake Road that you discussed. The main circulation pattern is the same. So this, if you get into the study, if you had time to read the whole thing in detail, I spent a fun night just looking at all the numbers, and they go really in depth on 3 different proposals, 3 or 4 different proposals for closing off different streets and making one ways to really change the circulation pattern and remove car trips from the park, which has been a priority for us, thinking this is a park, its primary use is as a park. And then, you know, the study sort of puzzlingly to me dismiss all of them, saying, well, none of them can be done without apocalypse happening traffic wise. And so we're gonna just not remove any car trips from the park. And so it chooses, you know, to ignore all of the options it considered and choose an option that it didn't even do a whole traffic study for, and basically maintain the level of traffic in the park. So that's to me the biggest flaw. You know, again, we'd be happy to see a lot of these things happen, but we really are asking the city to consider going back to the drawing board on the circulation options, and think about ways that we can reduce some car trips in the park, because, you know, its primary purpose is not to be a shortcut for drivers. Its primary purpose is to be a park where people go and play. And, you know, there are some things that we can think about doing, like the exit by the fact that you can drive from Madison Avenue near Willett out toward Western and State and Englewood. You know, that there's really no reason anybody needs to take that drive through the park. You can drive out Madison and make a right on Lake. and basically get to the same direction. So, and there's things like that, if you think a little bit more outside the box, we would really like to see that you can eliminate shortcut potential, basically. So, that's the main things that we are hoping to see change in the final, is some change to the circulation pattern. I didn't think there was quite enough emphasis on the traffic calming portion of the study. There's like a couple pages about some ideas that they had, but they didn't really go into too much detail about how they're going to actually slow traffic on the main road, which is important because right now that roadway is so wide that, if you're ever crossing by Hudson Avenue there, the main sort of crossing with the new light up signs, you can tell folks go 40 miles an hour through there pretty routinely. And it's because it's extremely wide and it's easy to drive that fast without.
Not like
No, I'm talking about
the road.
in the park.
Oh, you said up to on the other
Sorry,
side, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to mention, we have had continuing complaints from neighbors about speeding on South Lake Ave, which is also very wide. And I did finally, by the way, hear back from traffic engineering, Joe Aquaviva, our NEU officer, had reached out to him, and they have actually done the measurements, but that was last week, and he hasn't. I said, well, what are they? He said, well, the average is about 30, but the average includes creeping in traffic, stopping, everything. So I said, well,
Yeah.
more granular numbers.
An average speed of 30, that's really high for a city street.
Yeah,
This
that-
average,
that's what I was thinking.
the average speed should never be 30 because there's a light on that street. So you're spending half
That's
your time on
including
the street at
stopped.
zero.
Yes, so I think he was gonna get back to us with more numbers, but I've not heard back yet. I just, when it came up, I heard a tingling sound because I know we have neighbors who are very concerned. And we hope to hear back from it. It should have been, frankly, information like that should have been available through the traffic study.
Right. Yes. Another thing worth mentioning too is the city now has a pilot program for speed humps, which just was launched in West Hill. I think the first one was unveiled, and it's been pretty successful so far, according to the city. Their average speed went down to 22 miles an hour where they put a speed hump in. So that has had a big difference. So speed humps, if you're not familiar, are basically long speed bumps. So you can drive over them comfortably at about 20 miles an hour, whereas like a speed bump is like the ones at the mall or in a shopping center, wherever you go 5 miles an hour over, they're shorter and steeper. So the city's on board with the idea of trying out speed humps and maybe a good candidate for one. They're quite expensive though. I think I want to say it was several $100,000 to install one. I was surprised, but also not surprised. Yeah, I think you think of it as just a big pile of pavement, right? But it's
It's like just put some dirt over and just make a mound.
Yeah. I mean, you can buy speed humps, like removable ones, online. They're like a few $1,000s, but then they can be so that's sort of, I think, the 10,000-foot view of our thoughts on Washington Park study. Our main goal is to keep pushing, making sure that some of these things happen, because that's where things tend to fall down and get lost. So we'll be sort of rallying the troops and maybe reaching out to you all for support on that. Once there's a final version of this, working to try to make sure there's money budgeted to get some of these things done and implemented. We're going to have to push the city on making sure that happens.
Virginia,
Oh, thanks.
Good.
you're muted,
You
Virginia.
need to unmute, Virginia.
You go on mute.
Okay, thank you very much, Andrew.
You're welcome.
You certainly put in a lot of work, because I remember when you came to us numbers of years ago and you were pretty low key about all this stuff, and you've gotten everybody together and you've gotten the publicity and you've gotten some action, which I think is great for all of us. So I just want to comment a little bit on the your stance towards the Washington Park study. I tried to read through it and I couldn't make head nor tails because I'm not a person that can look at maps and directions or anything else. And, but I think that your analysis of basically the main flaw, I think that's really helped me understand a different approach. I'm just wondering how realistic do you think, I mean, if what they intend to do costs so much money, how realistic do you think it would be to really drastically reroute the traffic as you suggest?
Oh, that's a great question. You know, we've always advocated for sort of temporary and pop-up solutions to these kind of things. Traffic can be rerouted in the park using, well, think about what the park has right now in terms of traffic control, right? There's no paint on any of the roads. There's a traffic light in the middle of it. There's a couple stop signs. So closing off an area to traffic like they have, there's a way to do it in a really permanent way, which is what they propose, and that's what costs, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars to put a new curb and a fancy thing, and plant things, take asphalt out. The easier way to do that and to try things and see how effective they would be is to do temporary solutions. So those big orange Jersey barriers that they put in for like Tulip Festival and things like that, you can close off sections of roadway, and that's at essentially no cost. I mean, it's not no cost, there's staff time that goes into doing that. And those kind of solutions can be made even semi-permanent using paint and things like planters. I would, if you haven't looked closely at the corner of Henry Johnson and Washington, there's a bus stop, and there used to be what's called a slip lane. Used to be able to turn right, and now you have to go a little farther and turn right. The way that they did that was basically they're putting down some paint and some plants. And so these things don't have to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to try them out. And so that's what we would advocate. They have all of these predictions about what will happen to traffic if you do certain things. We can try just a couple things, and if getting getting some fewer cars speeding near the playground would mean us maybe closing off one thing, we think that would be worth trying.
Yeah, now that I remember all those temporary pilot type of things that went back to when we were working on protected bike lanes and all those various things. And so I'm just wondering if the board, since we've already kind of written our comments, if I don't know if, I mean, this is something we take up amongst ourselves, but I would be kind of inclined to support your position. In other words, we kind of, our reply or our comments did not really take into account, I don't believe, anything like you're proposing, which is to go back and look at and try some things out that have been taken off the table without supposedly any real reason. So I'm just kind of putting it out there. That's all I
One
have to say.
difficulty, Virginia, and I guess I didn't know, but the problem is once you go into the whole study, you have to make a call. A lot of people, for example, are calling for one-way streets. I'm not a traffic engineer, but I've had some experience with it. I know what happens on one-way streets. Traffic goes a lot faster. So I'm not sure we want to jump into that and make a call. When your piece on it, Andrew, did Walkable Albany have a position piece on the study?
Yes, we put a comment in.
So your general comment was look at changing the traffic patterns. Some others that I saw said go to one-way streets.
Yes, we didn't get that specific this time around. We did, they actually considered our Walkable Albany concept as one of the proposals in the study, that had included some of these ideas, closing some things off, making some parts one way so that you would exit right immediately, things like that. And they have a paragraph about why it wouldn't work. But yeah, these are legitimate concerns.
I appreciate they had a lot of major infrastructure stuff that would slow it down, but as you point out, if they do it and if they pay for it, there may be less expensive ways.
And to be clear, I mean, this is the study about how, to do the highest level, best version of it. This isn't the engineering drawings for how we'll actually be implemented. So
Right.
if the study says we're going to do this great big thing with a garden and, make this green space, and, the actual engineering implementation that happens in a couple of years when there's funding for it could be something different. This isn't designing things. This is more talking about, frankly, this is mostly about what will happen to car traffic. That's what they spend most of the time on in this document. It's mostly a traffic study. They do the other things as well because
Even though they changed the name from traffic study to
Yeah.
complete streets.
yeah, they do some of the other things in the complete streets, but the bulk of it, you can see they spent the most of their time worrying about, well, what about people turning left on Lark Street? That's where that's what's the deciding factor here. And it frankly comes down to the left turns. The reason they can't do any of this stuff is it'll become really hard to make a left from New Scotland to Madison. It'll hard to make a left from from Madison to Lark. It'll be hard to make a left from Lark to Washington. And because of those things, we can't have any changes to our park. To me, that just sounds a little bit like a cop-out when the whole community who lives in this area is saying, we really want this, we really want to try it. There has to be a way forward here. And are there alternative things we can do about traffic instead of just writing it off?
It was interesting when you did the, what would they call it, the road diet for Madison. How many people, including myself, stopped using Madison on the way into work, and we used other routes to get to where we had to go. So that was an organic way of sort of saying, if you want to sit in a little bit of traffic, fine, but find another way. So I'm wondering if that could be some of the approach here as well, not just to assume that we're going to get busier, but then maybe some other people think that's in different ways. There's different ways to get point A, that.
Right, and most of this traffic is coming to Albany Med, right? That's really what we're talking about. And there are lots of ways to get to Albany Med from the suburbs, right? Like even if you live north of here, you can come to Albany Med from other ways. You don't have to take Henry. It's not like it's the only way. So people will consider other ways. And, we also just don't design our city park to be the most convenient way for people from the suburbs to drive to their job. And we just at some point have to say that out loud. Like, it's important that people be able to get to their jobs. I say it out loud all the time. I'd like more people to say it out loud. It's very important that people be able to get around. And of course, everybody uses the streets, even those of us who live here, right? And it is frustrating sometimes when there's a little bit of traffic. But
What's the next step here? I guess I did see you. Actually, I saw some of the other days, the Washington Parks and that Peters. A lot of them focused on different parts of the issue. I think we were probably the only one that talked about Hudson.
I think Matt Peter did too. He was on board with that. Yeah.
But they're going to come out with a non-draft study, and then there will be more discussion. We don't know whether it will be a wholesale change, major change, or any of the changes that people ask for. Do you know when that's going to happen?
I don't. Frankly, this study was supposed to come out last December, so I don't know when the final version of this will even come out. It's a pretty slow timeline from what it seems like. We wrote to the mayor requesting that it be sped up once, I think it was May, and we were like, this is now 5 months late, what's going on? And it came out immediately after that. So I think keeping the pressure on and asking about these things does work, and it does help. So I think the next step is to wait for the final to come out, and then to start pushing for some of the changes to be funded.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming to our first meeting, and we should give you credit. You also helped set up the Zoom camera.
No problem.
It is. I can't see her on the screen. Oh, there she is.
Yeah.
Marilyn, go ahead and ask your question, but you'll have to unmute.
Yes, okay. Can you hear me?
Sure can.
Okay. Well, I was living in New York City when they closed the Park Street and, yes, there was grumbling, but it worked and it made the park a heck of a lot nicer place to walk through when, they didn't, there were ways around and the park covers a great big area and Washington Park is not that large an area that, as you say, people can't find alternatives. So I think we all just need to help as best we can to push for, just like you keep saying, think outside the box. And, remember, it's a city and people live in the city. And we like to stress, as you have many times, walkability. Well, walkability means you're able to walk. So I just want to, put a plug in for you to keep going. Don't give up.
Yeah, and nobody's even gotten to the point of pushing for there to be no cars at the park, right? We're not even there yet, but if it could happen in Manhattan with all the traffic that they were carrying,
That's true.
But I still have some.
there's the two across the streets, right? Yeah.
Although are they?
Our Upper Madison group has had a similar discussion about the Price Chopper Market 32 on Madison and walkability for people. And I'm not sure how this contributes exactly, but a couple of engineers had been actually hired to look at ways of making the Market 32 lot safer for pedestrians. And all of their recommendations, the least expensive recommendation that was made from an actual engineer, I think came in at 60,000. Virginia or Maryland can confirm that. There was the other engineer that suggested something, it was going to be over $100,000 to rework their parking lot, and Market 32 was not going to pay that. Looking at their recommendations, I came up with trying to take some of their recommendations and implement some of it that will make a difference. And it may not be everything that all of the engineers were recommending, but it was something. And we did get Market 32 to agree that when they restripe the parking lot, they are going to implement some of these suggestions, and it's only going to be the cost of restriping, which they have to do anyway. So there was no additional cost on their part. It is a slightly different situation because it's a private lot. We don't have to deal with all the city things, and our recommendations are really low-key things, but they will make a difference in the way that traffic and pedestrians can get around that parking lot. As it is right now, a lot of people in our neighborhood walk to that market. I walk to the market routinely and it's challenging. So I guess my question is not necessarily to you, Andrew, but as a group, how do we get some of these things just quickly kind of guerrilla done, if you will, through the process?
You're doing a great job with the Price Chopper parking lot, but the
Not yet.
approach.
They say that, in the next few months, possibly the spring, the restriping will happen, and they are going to implement some spaces. There's going to be the addition of a bollard, which will create a dedicated space for pedestrians. They are moving part of a guardrail, so there will be an additional walking space from West Lawrence. And those two things are actually going to make the lot significantly better for pedestrians, with shopping bags, which right now, a lot of people are scrambling over a hill and slipping and it's muddy and bags are going everywhere, so.
Right.
Yeah, that's-
It's no fun in the winter. Yeah, I mean, just to, there's, when you said guerrilla ideas, I mean, there are groups out there in the country, not in Albany, but like in LA, there's an organization called LA Walks that just goes and puts crosswalks in where there should be crosswalks. And they have a guide online for how to paint them. And unfortunately, I think that's probably a felony. So I don't recommend guerrilla. It's probably criminal mischief, it's probably property damage. But not giving legal advice, but
And better when it's not recorded on Zoom.
I would never.
Yeah, they did not tell us to.
I've definitely had dreams about just painting the crosswalks on Lark Street since they've all been gone for 2 years. But
Black Lives Matter was painted, the rainbow crosswalks lasted for a couple of years.
they're still, still kind of there.
So the city could do something without it having to be a whole study if we can just get agreement to do it. Yes?
And that was sort of the idea back when they had tried doing the pop-up bump outs on Lark Street, and I think they did some in the South End also, some pop-up things. The idea was they could do these quick build projects where, you just go out there with some paint and just put some planters out or whatever, and quickly, boom, all of a sudden you've shortened the crosswalk, you've slowed traffic. Lots of cities have those kind of programs. And my understanding was right before the pandemic, the city actually got a funding for those projects, and I don't think anything came of it. But yeah, these things seem possible to do, right? And so it's sort of been frustrating in our group for a while. We've been asking, we ask for something, and then you just hear nothing back. Swan Street's a good example that I just mentioned it briefly, but there's no crossing, there's no easy way to get across Swan Street by the plaza unless you go all the way up to State. So you can't cross at Chestnut. And so a lot of people do, and so that there's no crosswalk there. And so, everybody's been asking, well, can we just put something in temporarily? Like, how hard would it be to just paint, put down a paint? And that's apparently pretty hard.
Well, sometimes they worry too that if they paint it, it's an invitation to cross where it may not be safe.
Right.
And the commuting habits there have gone on for decades and decades.
Exactly. They're not used to it. Right.
But we will have another opportunity with the park study when it comes out, hopefully with some of the changes that have been requested.
Yeah, because at the end, it's still a recommendation, right, from this outside traffic study organization, Creighton Manning.
Engineering group,
consulted, to do that. So.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. So thanks so much for coming. It's been great to hear about all the projects that you guys are working on. But on the Washington Park study, one issue that as the president of the statewide bicycling advocacy organization, the New York Bicycling Coalition, what cities try to do and what is in Albany's bike master plan and planners recommend everywhere is you can't have bike lanes to nowhere, and it's really important to build a bike network. And so, our community really pushed for traffic calming on Madison Avenue, not so much because we wanted bike lanes, we wanted to slow the traffic and make it more calm, but the city did decide to put in bike lanes, whereas our Protected Bike Lane Coalition certainly was pushing for protected bike lanes. And I think if we had done that, we would have gotten more interested but concerned people on to Madison Avenue. Unfortunately, I believe Madison Avenue has not, the traffic has calmed, and that is great, but we're not seeing real increases in people bicycling on the street. They use the sidewalk, but not so much street. But anyway, but my issue, which I had mentioned to John and some board members, is that as the bike network issue, and I did submit this comment to the city, any opportunity that I can get to drive to ride my bicycle on a no stress area, I will take. And so a low stress, the bike lane, I'll deal with the bike lane, and then no stress is the path in the park to get to work. But in order to get from Madison Avenue to get to the no motorized path in the park, I put my life I took my life into my own hands every single day. And so I stopped trying. It was just not worth it. And so it's too bad that when they did this study, they didn't bring out the bicycle master plan and say, oh, we're supposed to be trying to build a network, and to bring in that connectivity to people. So that's just something that is, really bothersome. And to me, as somebody who tries to, reduce my carbon footprint as much as possible and would hope that more people would as well, but we're not going to get there if the city doesn't start investing in an actual network. So considering that budget time is coming up, you could think about that.
Well, there is talk of funding the westward path, right, going through Tivoli and the whole corridor up I-90 and connecting somehow across.
But it's not a network in the city to get from where you need to go to where you need to go, to get from home to work.
That's one of the hard things. I mean, the Helderberg Hudson doesn't generally take you from home to work. You got to cut down.
It's more of a recreational path.
Yeah.
I've almost hit you a couple times on the way. So,
lots to do there. I'd like to move on if we can. We got a lot of other stuff. But Andrew, thank you very much for inaugurating our. So moving on, we have a number of committee reports. I was going to start this out, but Carolyn started us out very nicely. And Luke Rumsey, who is not here tonight, could not be, did send a report via email, which I've shared with the board, in which I'll speak to briefly. And following that, we go to public safety with the NEU staff. But I think, as everyone knows, particularly those of us who live in Midtown, it just is a continuing series of bad, horrible events involving guns, shooting, people being wounded, a very difficult situation with what we still may think of as the student parties, but are no longer the student parties, or so they're including lots of high school students from the area suburbs, lots of inner city youth from high school age and or older, and they've become very violent and continuing dangerous situation. We can't say that the city is not paying any attention to it. They are. They obviously know it's an issue. They have put resources toward it, but a number of us are talking, including those who meet in the Committee of University and Community Relations, including landlords who live in the neighborhood, including certainly our elected officials. And I don't think anyone would stand up and say the city's not doing anything, they've got to do something. But a lot of people would say, no, it's not working. When a large contingent of the police force shows up on a Friday night, knowing that a problem may be coming, and they simply can't stop it, and in fact, things escalate and go to shooting another block, there's a problem. And I don't think there's a magic solution, but some of the things we're talking about are continuing constant high-level supervision and presence in those efforts, and having perhaps more than just what tends to be a force of young officers doing crowd control and trying to control what is really a mass street party. The university is willing to help by making, having sanctions against students who hold parties very badly, but they've been frustrated to some extent because there isn't, if all you can do is crowd control, you can't do citations for those who are using their houses for large overflow parties. It's not going to be effective for those who are just gathering on the street, which now happens with social media, and it's a thing that has happened continually. So we want to keep working with them, but I just felt I should say a few words about the severity of it without casting blame wantonly, but recognizing that we have to make some progress. And With that, I will, I'm not Luke, but I'll give you a short version of what he wrote to all of this.
Mr. President, if it's okay with you, can I run through a few reports before you begin? Because I have a meeting right now.
It would kind of interrupt things. We need to go to you have to leave the meeting, in other words, before you can.
Say that again?
You'll have to be leaving soon, is what you're telling me?
Yeah, I have another meeting right now.
Yeah, I guess we could do that, but if you'll keep it to 5 minutes.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
less than that. Hello, everybody. So for those of you who are new, if there's anybody online that is new, I'm the county legislator for the 7th legislative district, which is this district that we are in. Couple of reports that I have, the pandemic assistance for last year, we had a pandemic assistance program for small businesses, and about 7 to 10 businesses in the Pine Hills neighborhood were allocated some funding up to from $1,000 to $5,000. That was actually originally my idea. And I'm glad that businesses in our county, and especially in the Pine Hills neighborhood, were able to get the support that they need. We also provided PPE to the businesses, and I also actually passed around personally PPE equipment to individuals and neighbors. Legislative grants program for the year 2022 has started. The deadline to apply is going to be September 19th. Actually, that's this week. Is that this week? September? Yes. So September 19th is going to be the deadline for the legislative grants program. And how it works, if you received grants last year, you wouldn't be able to apply this year. So if you know any business that did not apply last year, you can ask them to apply, but then don't tell anybody. Even if you received last year, you can still try to apply and see, but don't tell anybody I said that. Albany International.
This will be on the internet.
No, it's fine. Albany International Airport is getting $60 million, hooray, for upgrades. This is a part of $230 million statewide project. Was a competition by the state that the state governor announced sometime this year, and Albany International Airport applied for 60 million, and they are getting the whole of the 60 million that they applied for. And those are going to be used for security clearance and the food court. Earlier, sometime a few weeks ago, I received a call from Jim at the music music shop at on Quail, that the building next to him, there's a lot of garbage in front of it. And I was able to call DGS, and they were able to go ahead and clean it up. And they also sealed off the building. I also used that opportunity to find out what was going on with the loft project on Quail Street. And they told me that 2 weeks from that time, they were going to start demolition. And I was able to drive by tonight and see that demolition is already ongoing there as of today. So those buildings are coming down, and that project, we hope to see it go up soon. 20 Benson Street, that is on the Beverwick neighborhood side, 20 Benson Street. There is a building that got burnt like 9 to 10 years ago. A little child actually died in that building. But right now, it was one of the buildings that I campaigned on to see that we have something going on, because it had just been left vacant and burnt like that for over 9 years. And so I'm happy to see that the county has finally taken over that building, and we are currently looking for a buyer. Other one is 130 and 135 Ontario Street, right? Two large buildings that are close to Central Avenue. Is also on the Beverwick neighborhood side. The county has taken over those 2 buildings as well. It's also a building that I campaigned on, because that's been left vacant for many years, and I want to see something go on there. county has taken it over, and they accepted qualifications from developers looking to have something to do with those two buildings. The deadline for that was August 4th of 2022. They did receive a lot of offers, and they are currently reviewing those offers as we speak. So another two big buildings that I'm looking to make sure that those are taken over by the county, and we have things going on there and put them on the tax roll. That's my report for tonight.
Can I ask you one question? 'Cause I
Yes.
saw you bring it up, but you had sent me an email, or I think it was voicemail, that you were now, there was an ability for the Pine Hills Neighborhood Association to spend the mural funds, the mural grant on something else.
Yes, the mural funding from last year, my goal was to have it to do a mural in the Pine Hills neighborhood. But a lot of the places that I have suggested, neighbors or things, and they are just not going right. So, and it's not that it has to be spent on a mural. I know Legal B had a lot of great ideas that I actually liked personally last time that we spoke. And I would like to see those, instead of the money sitting down there in the account. I'm not sure if they've actually given you the money.
Oh, yeah.
They've given you, all right. So instead of it just sitting there, I would like to see it like get used for something, some of the ideas that the neighborhood have. So yeah, it can be used for something else. It doesn't have to be a mural.
We have, of course, we'd be grateful that I'm sure there are many we should use it for, but we have to be concerned about how we got it legally and how we
Right.
can spend it legally.
It would be helpful to have some sort of documentation from the county saying that that was okay.
Okay, I can get that, too. But as long as it comes from me, it's also okay. 'Cause,
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, as long as it's something that when the county comes back to us in
I'll go
2
to,
years and when they're doing an audit and
I'll
says,
let you
not
see
this
it.
money for this, why did you use it on that? We want to be able to say, well, this was where we were given the permission to do that.
Yeah, I can send you an email to, actually, I guess I've already sent it. But I can send you a new email that
Well, we
says.
start with paying an email rather than, a message on my phone.
Right.
But still, I don't know. We
Maybe
have a
something on
group
letterhead.
that looks at issues, sort of our corporate accountability. Well, we are in fact a 501c3, so we have certain legal strictures that we have to meet, as well as normal grant
I think it's
making.
nice to know that that is an option.
Yes.
So I think it'd be great for
Yeah.
the group to sit and come up with ideas, and then we would probably send a note to the appropriate, helping the appropriate people think, what do you think of this idea? Get the permission.
Yes, I can send you an email that says you can use
None
it.
of us are allowed to go to chance.
Do you have letterhead?
Yes,
Maybe it could be on that.
okay.
PDF.
Great.
Just, dot and i's, cross and t's.
Well, we do appreciate that thought, and there's no shortage of things to do.
No.
We
Awesome.
could paint some crosswalks. Oh, wait. We'll talk about that later.
The words right out of my mouth. And thank you for letting me
All right.
go.
We appreciate it. Thank you, Burrow. So, as I said, I'll give you a synopsis of Luke Ramsey's report, and then we'll go to public safety, but I know that this is something a lot of folks are concerned about. And Luke is not only here, he's without internet access, so he has a very good excuse, otherwise he'd with us. Midtown violence, the university is extremely concerned regarding the continued violence, obviously. Since the start of the semester, they've been transparent with their students regarding their safety off campus, sending out numerous emails, mass text messages, and conducting door-to-door conversations with the police, stressing safety precautions, chief among them avoiding large off-campus gatherings, particularly on Hudson Avenue and surrounding areas. The size of these gatherings has diminished. They're saying over the past 2 weekends, the violence remains. That's after the one very bad event where the police were hit with bottles and there was gunfire when the crowd was pushed over by Madison Park. So on Monday, 9/12, the university made students aware of the incident that occurred that same date in the area of Western Avenue and Ontario Street, which is the one I just alluded to. and talk to them about it. Their messaging, this was described by Jordan Carlo Evangelist, has sort of changed. This is really not safe. And they have included sending emails to student parents. They have included all the messaging they did in door-to-door and emails. They also took some unusual steps that, as Jordan said, people hated, but they thought were warranted. They know from the CDTA bus passes where their students are going. So if people were going down to Midtown and coming back on that evening, they sent them notes, said, well, it looks like you were in the area of Midtown. You should know what happened and how dangerous this is. And they got a lot of pushback. They're like, hey, we're just telling you, what can happen and that what you did may have been, assuming you were there, you weren't going to the library or going to a study group over on what, something bad could happen. So they shared a lot of this at the CUCR meeting too. And they will have Chief Hawkins at the Thursday, October 6th CUCR meeting. So we think that's important. I'm not going to go into the IU Institute and other things. I just wanted to talk about the violence concern. And they have been good partners in working on this. We had a violence prevention group meeting the summer ago, but it seems almost like it's time to start that again. Again, I think the town has to be, what can we do to change this? I mentioned not only a large police presence, but higher levels of supervision and on the ground help. I mean, perhaps having a few detectives there that can figure out where the party's emanating from, while the crowd is being cleared. Maybe something they can do following the social media activity that generates a great deal of the attendance. A lot of other things can be done. I mean, technically speaking, city parks close at dark, and yet people are around Madison Park long after dark. And if they're not all shooting hoops, that is where a lot of the violence is occurring. So they could do regular patrols there. And I think, as everyone knows, the 212 and some of the other stores on Quail Street, some of which have been sanctioned for selling alcohol to juveniles. But even if they're not juveniles, having those stores open till all hours creates a dangerous situation. And I keep hearing explained so generally, oh yeah, there's something, some stores are grand, but I want to hear from the story, from the city, chapter and verse. How late are stores allowed to be open? Why is that? Is there a public good in having them open till 2 or 3 or 4 in the morning? And if there isn't, why do we allow that? And under what provisions does grandfathering happen? And do we have to do that? I know that the mayor used emergency powers in connection with a particular bar on Lark Street where problems were emanating. This would seem an incident, an ongoing problem of an equal nature. So if there isn't a convenient code that can be applied to shut these stores earlier, perhaps we should look at emergency actions. They've been tried before.
Or maybe a code could be written.
Could be written, sure. And again, it's not unlike the point you make. Oh, good heavens, the car traffic. Oh, good heavens, the commerce that happens after 11 p.m. So what? And sometimes you just have to take a hard look at it. So those are some thoughts, and there are more that people are raising. And I think if we as a community raise specific thoughts, things that we'd like to see happen, it'll be helpful, because it's not that there isn't concern on behalf of the mayor, the city, the chief, and certainly the university is working very hard on this. But when everyone's good efforts aren't enough, then we need to sort of think of some new ones. I don't want to make a speech. I just wanted to make a point of the severity of it. And I'm sorry Luke couldn't be here tonight, because he's a very effective speaker on these issues and a voice. But I think it would be great to get a large group out for the CUCR meeting and to do as much work as we can before that. And with that, I guess I'll turn to public safety.
Virginia's got her hand up.
Okay, Virginia.
Hi, I don't know if I'm going to embarrass this guy, but I just want to call attention to Dustin Schmeeman, who I happened to meet.
He's not
Online with-
embarrassed. I can see him smiling.
Yeah, so we had a little go around when you guys, when we were offline and you were offline. And he told me that he was, well, I just like it if he maybe could introduce himself, because I think it's interesting that he's here tonight. Go
Sure,
ahead, Jeff.
thanks, Virginia. So my business partner and I, Jay, who was actually a graduate of SUNY Albany in 2009, about probably a year or two out of college, we purchased a duplex property in Pine Hills. We renovated it, top to bottom, and rented it out to, I believe, one of the sororities, like girls within one of the sororities there. Fast forward 10 years, we have about 40 properties in the area. We house about 200 and something students, and we also have a lot of non-student multifamily buildings as well in Pine Hills. And I think I touched base with you, John, probably about 2 or 3 years ago, a little bit after the pandemic began, because we started to see the crime begin to be a problem in the area. And obviously that's concerning to us because we have a lot of students in the area. We were getting calls from their parents. A lot of our residents were upset with what was going on. And, with John's help, I've kind of been vocal for the landlords and communicating kind of some of our concerns about safety in the area and how it's a total top priority for us. And I've been working hand in hand with John over the past year to brainstorm ideas on what we can do to just make it a better neighborhood for everybody.
We appreciate that, Justin. A lot of the things you've done are, helpful. I know you're working on getting more private cameras on student buildings, because those are helpful to police as well. So we appreciate your effort here. And I was hoping you'd speak up. So stay with us. We're going to go out to Officer Joe Aquaviva, our NEU officer. Hopefully you're still there.
I'm here.
So I know I don't expect you to come out with a new 10-point plan for this, and I know you've been in a lot of these meetings, but we do appreciate everything that APD is doing, and certainly the service from the officers. So I hope you know that. But with that, we'll go to your regular report.
So I have to tell you that I spent most of the day sifting through crime reports for the last 30 days. And gun violence seems to be the number one thing in Pine Hills. I'm actually looking at eight different reports that involve handguns. And it's one of those things I don't know what plan could be put in place, because you hit the nail on the head when you talked about how many officers were on Hudson dealing with a situation when a whole shooting turns around on Hamilton. And what was that, 6 victims? That's one of the things that's going to be hard to combat, although we'll do our best. The one thing that I did note is that we did have 3 burglaries, 2 of which were student housings where they left their doors unlocked. The third one was an empty residence that had been being rehabbed. Obviously, with the students, if we can continue to just get the message out to them that they have to lock their houses up, they can't leave them unsecured. That will help at least alleviate some of those calls, and then we can concentrate on the gun violence. You're not wrong in the parties. I speak with the officers that work the details on the weekends, and they actually have been telling me that a lot of the parties have been smaller. I have them note the addresses, and in the past where I may have gone around and handed out GCO tickets for loud parties or loud music on the following day of a party. I've been trying to just help educate the students to the fact that even a small party starts to attract the wrong people. And when that happens, it's dangerous. And if I just keep getting that word out there, maybe even some of that will dry up a little bit and change something. But anyone that's out and about needs to keep their eyes open and be vigilant. And if they see something, they need to call us and let us know. Does anybody have any questions for me? Thank you.
Hi, Joe, I just have one question that has to do with the GTO or whatever you mentioned. Are those the tickets that you give out?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so how are those? I mean, are they being effective? Because I know that in the past, they were really pretty effective in cutting down on parties and that kind of stuff. Do you know whether they are being given out in the same with the same
If,
frequency, or doesn't it work anymore? Or what's the story with that?
oh no, it works. If the officers that are out there on those details, if they see a large party and they have to go break it up, they'll try to locate the residents who actually live in the house and give them issue those tickets. And if they don't find them, that's when usually I get involved, and I'll go over in the morning and try to catch them like the next day and hand out the tickets as well. But again, our problem really hasn't been large, loud parties. They've been smaller, they've been quieter. So that message has seemed to resonate, but it's just the whole thing of trying to explain to students that as soon as people start coming and going from your house, it starts to attract the people that weren't invited. And like one of the reports I have was somebody tried to get into a house party, and when they were denied access because they weren't a student, they pulled a gun on the guy who told them he couldn't come in, as he was walking away. Luckily, he did not fire a round off or anything, but this is what I'm trying to inform students about, is that's all that's needed, is that visual of, oh, here's a party, I want to go hang out there. And then all of a sudden, when access is denied, then all of a sudden there's an issue.
Oh.
Marilyn?
Well, I don't.
I have,
Oh,
I
yeah, you do have your hand up. Okay.
have two questions. First of all, is it really true, as I read in the paper, that a lot of the people that are coming into Pine Hills are actually coming into Pine Hills to cause mayhem that are not really from the area? Is that true?
So I don't know if they're just coming in to cause mayhem, or they're coming in because they were invited by someone who might live there, or because the reputation is getting out there that like this is the neighborhood to party in. I've heard rumors of high schoolers coming to the neighborhoods because in some of the college parties, they weren't caring if they went to high school or what. They were a student, they can come on in and party. So it's hard to tell. When I look at these reports, there's a lot of mixed addresses, and some people are from Albany, some people are students, so their address, that's indicated on the reports, and a lot of them, I'm seeing a lot of people from Schenectady, and I don't know if they're new to the area or somebody that they know moved to the area, or they're just here for that. I'm not actually the one doing the interviews, and so I couldn't answer that question.
And then my other question is are there any restrictions to businesses and other places, public places, having CCTV cameras? I don't see many
No.
around here, and I know that certainly in places that I've lived, there've been cameras everywhere, and there's always a sign that says you're on camera. I mean, places like bed and breakfast, small hotels, all sorts of places, not just businesses, but you don't see that around here. And I just wondered if there was, I don't know, something.
You would be surprised at how many cameras are in that neighborhood. Most of the cameras in that neighborhood too, our detectives know who has them. We've dealt with them before. A lot of the incidents that we deal with, we'll follow people right out of where the incident happened and pick them up on camera and follow them to where they're going if we can. So the cameras are there. I think a lot of people don't really advertise it anymore. But a lot of there are more cameras than you think. I mean, I know that there are a lot of landlords out there, like Justin, who we've had conversations in the past about putting more cameras in. But it's really expensive for somebody to do on their own. But if they do it and they're there, most of them are willing to share that footage with the police department to help us with the crimes that are going on.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Carolyn has a minute.
Yeah. Joe, somebody mentioned at the CUCR meeting, it may have been you, I think, or someone else, that APD has recovered more guns than ever this year, and yet there are still more shootings going on. Do we have a sense of whether or not more guns are being flooded into the community? And obviously, if you knew where they were coming from, you guys would stop it, but a sense of, how to start to address that?
So the bigger problem is that the guns that we find, and we find a lot of them, they're all been attained illegally. Like it's so,
Yeah.
I listen to things like the gun debates, and I feel that creating new gun laws doesn't really change the fact that criminals are going to find ways to get guns. And apparently it's easy to get them, because you're right. There are more than ever just flooding in, and it seems like everybody's got one. And I don't know what's the way to combat that.
It's kind of a supply side issue that has to do with gun laws, though, ultimately, the laws under which they're created and sold and get into circulation illegally. But it's a problem that's much bigger than Albany, for certainly that solved. We're suffering the impact. And these are high school students young, carrying guns. And so gripes that used to be 1 out of 10 times resulting in a fist fight, now 1 out of 10 times.
Well, that's just today's society when it comes to the youth. It's like years ago, if two people had an issue, you're right, they would have a fist fight and you dust each other off and go home. And now it's not like.
Yeah, it's from a law enforcement perspective. I mean, no one's saying it's an easy problem, but we're seeking ways at least to control these. I mean, not all the incidents. There's a lot of after school Albany High School incidents as well, but there's a lot of Friday and Saturday night on. We still refer to it as the student midtown area, although it's very, very mixed. And so, as I said, I wasn't going to call on you to come up with the answer, but we are in one way or another seeking to have the city improve the answer. We don't expect, miracles and everything to vanish, but it seems that we've got to come up with some new ways. And I did want to mention, I think I mentioned it earlier, I spoke to Bill Trudeau, and he has the data. It's just a matter of getting it to the Sunlight Cabinet. Have you had any further discussions with him, Joe?
No, my understanding of that whole data collection was that something like 20,000 cars, I think, were registered, and I believe the mean address or the mean speed was like 27. And the other thing was the percentage of actual people over the speed limit was pretty minimal. So I feel like it, because of the lights and the way that block is designed, it probably doesn't really get as fast as people would think.
Well, the problem is, I don't want to go into techno speak, but you need more granular data. First, take out the cars that were going the speed limit or stopped or slowed. Tell us how many were going over it, and tell us what proportion, how many of them were at 30, 40, 50, 60. That's the sort of data we need. I mean, I don't know what is normally produced by traffic safety or a study like this, but the interesting thing was he called me back because I had left a series of communications saying, we're waiting. Joe said you had it, and it turned out that the camera was in the right place. They were looking at the block between Madison and Hudson. And it was more than a week ago now. So I'm just kind of wondering where the data is, but we'll pursue the conversation directly with traffic engineering. Just if you do hear anything or got anything, of course, please do contact.
I haven't seen it. I got the averages, but I was told that it was yours. They were going to forward it all to you anyways. So
Okay.
if you haven't gotten it yet, my assumption is it's on its way.
But you saw something, Joe? Is that what you were quoting?
No. Apparently
Just
Bill
what
had
told
did.
you.
Bill had did some of the averaging and when I spoke to him, he just gave me some quick data. But he told me that he was approved to send you the data. And so my understanding is it's the entire thing is on its way to you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. And Rick is not here either in person or virtually.
They
for-
usually have dress rehearsals on Thursdays.
Right. Anyone else from zoning and code enforcement? The one thing I know is that there's actual work taking place on the lofts at Pine Hills, AKA 237 Western Avenue, which is really sort of behind Western and Quail. So that's good news, we think. And is there any other news from Pine Hills?
So, quick question, does anybody know what's going on with the property across from the Damien Center that we had met with? Jim was refurbishing that rate.
Oh,
756.
Yes.
well.
I don't know,
No, I
that's
didn't
not,
look at
that's
it.
not the number, but
Well,
it's
some-
close,
okay.
but it's close. 'Cause
What we used to call the
we
no
had-
step house.
Yeah, the no step house.
Yes.
No, I don't know any news on
Okay,
that,
I was just curious.
Oh, across the street from. Okay.
you know.
From
So-
perspective. Okay, thanks.
Good
Town
time?
Pine Hills Committee. So our first meeting of our program year will be this Monday, or not this Monday, a week from Monday, the 26th of September at 6:30 PM, and that will be on Zoom. If you don't get a link from me and you are interested, if you don't get a link from me by a week from today and you're interested, let me know. You can reach out and I'll send a link. We have been sharing social media messages on Facebook about trash, litter, and recycling for the last 4 weeks. I think we have one more week's worth of messages, and then we will start the cycle over again in October. We're going to do this every few months, key months, and see if getting that out there. We'll also try to push it out onto Twitter and Instagram. And I know Luke in the past has shared it with the university community, just to try to get people to pay more attention, neighbors in the neighborhood to pay more attention to trash, litter, and recycling. And we're not really sure how to measure the impact, but that is our that is where we're starting. So the committee hopes to work with the university to plan some smaller social events this fall. Obviously, we did not have much more this year. As some of you may know, Luke is actually in a different position with the university, and the person who is just taken over off-campus student services, Ken Luzier, is just getting started, and he's just getting started. He's sort of trial by fire here. So, you know, we hope to be able to do some things for this fall or at a minimum next spring. And then the Trees and Street ARPA project that was funded is still in the planning stages. So we don't really have anything new about that right now. That's all I got.
Thanks. And we're still working and talking with the DPW and the water department on the ARPA grant.
We don't have a DPW in the city of Albany.
Sorry, DGS, yeah. Oops. Anyway, DGS and the water department, who has a strong stormwater perspective on that grant program. I think I said it in one of our last meetings, but they have told us that they're looking at a larger capital project on Hudson Avenue, showing again, the city is paying attention to Hudson Avenue. But we want to make sure that the larger capital project deals not just with planting trees, which is very important, and improving streets and sidewalks, which was not originally, we didn't have the money for the 50,000 ARPA awards, but we also want to see more greenery there, and particularly things that will help with stormwater. So we're very grateful for the additional funding, but we're still looking for a plan. We keep having sort of ethereal conversations, but we're taking steps. I think that's it for Midtown. Upper Madison, Maryland.
Yes, as you can probably see on my left side, I've decided to have visuals. Those are 2 of the 67 boxes of books that are in our house right now, but will leave by October 2nd, which is the day of our street fair. So I sent Danielle a rack card showing the information about the street fair, October 2nd. We could use volunteers. I sent her a link to a form if you or you know anyone who might be interested in putting in an hour or so at the street fair as a volunteer. They can fill that out. And the third thing is our film series in October 13th, The Night of the Hunter, starring Robert Mitchum as a very creepy, nasty, horrible guy. And it's a really scary movie. I remember it well. Is happening 7 o'clock at the Madison Theater. And that's it. And there's a poster. There'll be a poster on the website as well.
Marilyn, do
Yes.
you want to talk at all about the garden project?
Oh, yeah, yes, and at the bottom of Reichman Avenue, Margie Skinner and her husband have put the finances into creating what she's calling our little garden area, which I've dubbed Olga, as it just happens to fit those letters. And she's going to have planters and benches and so on. And in order to get the city to water that area, it has to be proposed by us as a neighborhood association. And then she can go to the city to ask them to water the planters and keep the lawn mowed, etc. So I mean, I think that's about it. But it's nice because it's a nice little area. And I think it's incredible that she and her husband have offered to do this.
But she was looking to use the Pine Hills Neighborhood Association's 501c3 status to get water from this free water from the city. And she inquired about it. I inquired of our 501c3 expert, Perry, and
Not a lawyer.
not a lawyer, but
I've been running a not-for-profit for
Couldn't-
very long time.
we couldn't see any problems in doing that, right?
Is
So
any type of liability or anything, and really what we're doing is we're kind of saying we're going to support this,
Yep.
this effort. So, how wonderful to have this donation. So I don't see any reason to not do it. So,
do we need further examination in your view, or it's kind of, it's,
I think so. I mean, they're just
Probably
looking.
vote
look,
on
we should have a resolution.
the board vote on it.
All right, I'll make a proposal that we support our little garden area at the bottom of Reichman Avenue. For, let's see, what do we want to say to be
Pine Hills Neighborhood Association
Yeah, the
sponsored
Pine,
project.
as sponsored by the Pine Hills Neighborhood Association.
yes, okay, yeah, I think that's probably good.
Danielle, if you didn't get that perfectly, you can make it up. And Barrett.
I'll second the motion for all of that. Well done.
I don't know if we have a quorum right now, so we might wanna do
I
that.
believe we do.
Board.
Oh, yeah, we got a quorum.
Oh, okay.
All in favor?
Virginia has a question.
We got a discussion. Virginia, are you, or is your hand just trailing?
For a vote, not for anything else.
Okay.
Vote yes.
She voted yes.
Yes.
Okay, I thought we were still doing discussion, but let's vote. Marilyn votes yes, all in
Yes,
favor?
yes.
Yes.
You got
Come
that,
on,
okay.
it's getting late here. I just want you to know.
I'm starting to fade myself.
Marilyn, did you
Yes,
vote yes, I presume?
Yes.
Eric, Lori?
Oh, geez.
Eric
I
and
thought we were
Lori?
supposed to do this online,
I'm good.
this kind of stuff. I mean, this is our
Eric.
part of our policy. Can we move
Eric.
on to Owusu?
No,
Because,
actually, it's not our policy to do it online, Virginia.
No,
our
it's a
policy to
board issue
disclose
that
what
we're
we vote
supposed-
on, but,
oh, okay, can we just
Okay,
move
so-
on, please? Poor
It's
Owusu,
actually
we're
better
waiting
when
here.
we can do it in public. but,
Jeez.
Just want to be clear.
Come on, guys, move on.
Was Eric, if you can hear me, and Lori, then your vote's in.
I'm good. Thanks.
Eric voted yes. Lori may be technically abstaining, but
Wait, what am I voting on?
See, that's the problem, is that some, this,
who was that?
that was Lori.
Lori, oh. A motion
Yeah,
that the Pine Hills Neighborhood Association support the garden project on Reichman Avenue.
Always, gardening is good.
There we have it, unanimous of those here. Clearly a quorum. Done and will be recorded. Isn't that easy? Okay. It is getting late though. I'm very sensitive to that. Jay Meeks is not with us for communications, and I'll defer from making that a quick summary of what we're thinking about and have been, because it goes back to June and it's September. We've all been away. Will is not here, so we'll skip membership, and I'm ready to move to adjourn.
Can I make one?
Oh my gosh, I'm so-
One more thing.
Owusu who waited patiently.
Take your time. Just for the group, wanted to re-mention that coming up October 2nd is the street fair, which we've touched on, but again, the volunteers and one of the things that the street fair is trying to sponsor is improvements on the Price Chopper block in front of the hideous wall. The hideous wall, something is going to have to happen because it is continuing to deteriorate. And the plan that we had to get the wall more attractive and not deteriorate, it's too late to implement the plan because of the deterioration. And so we are moving ahead with the other parts of the promenade plan, and we will be looking for sponsors for some of the elements. We have sponsors for some of the elements, and that project is continuing. So I just wanted to make sure that it is still out there. And I'm done.
Owusu.
Thank you.
Yay,
Thank you.
Owusu.
No,
You get a prize.
I was actually thinking about leaving, but I took one of the brownies, so I was like, I can't take it and leave, But no, glad to be here as always. And like many of you, one of the top concerns that Midtown Pine Hills and the Temple Ward have is that, you know, with public safety happening in our neighborhood at this, particularly some of the violence that we have not witnessed in so many years, just to see, you know, with the gun violence that are happening in our neighborhood, it's quite frankly unacceptable. And I'm working with, you know, continue to work with some of our beat officers on the phone currently for the past 2 weeks, been on the phone with the police chief every other day to come up with ideas and figure out ways that we can make just the Midtown Pine Hills a little bit much more safe. I'm being in communication with also with Luke, some of the things that I hear, particularly with Luke saying that, you know, a lot of people say it's the parties that are bringing people into the neighborhood, but also we have to hold some of these not institutions, but some of the parties that's taking place accountable, particularly just kind of, you know, maybe whether we record where the party's happening and just kind of send it to Luke. And I speak to Luke. Luke is, and his team and also the universities, they are ready to come down on the students. And I know that sometimes, you know, when the police go into some of these, they get a tap on the wrist, but, you know, when they go in front of the universities, they're treated a little bit more harsher and sometimes even get suspended from school, being kicked out of the school. And I know Luke and university and other colleges are just waiting to make an example out of some of these kids. And it's unfortunate what's happening because, again, like college students, they move into our neighborhood to kind of have, you know, memories, to make some memories. But right now, there are people coming from Troy, Schenectady, all over the city of Albany to try to not sometimes pray, but also try to party with some of the students, and they're not allowing that. And what happens is that sometimes they stand in the middle of the road, and sometimes the BS follow them. So that's something that we're seeing out there. That's what something I'm hearing from some of the students and also seeing from some of the residents. But again, we have to just go back to what's working, continue to have police presence in the neighborhood, utilizing some of the new technology that we have. There's a camera that's stationed in Madison Park right now. I've been with the mayor and we're talking about this year's budget for additional cameras, for surveillance cameras for the police department. So the police department budget is going to go up again this year. Try to use some of the new technologies that are available. And when I met with the mayor, you know, some of the things that she requested was, what are some of the streets that we would like to see some of the cameras installed? And it's consistent with what we've been talking about for the past couple of years. Hudson and Quail, head to Hudson, Ontario, Hamilton, Ontario, and also Elberon and Quail to try to get some of those cameras. I did add Elberon and Quail in. I'm not sure if I'm gonna get it with the data. Doesn't look like it, but just wanted to throw that in there also. Another thing too that we talked about when I met with the mayor is paving. So the mayor just wanted to, CDTA is gonna come out with their own request of street conditions, but just also wanted to send some suggestions. And some of the suggestions were South Lake between Madison and Weston, Park Ave between West Lawrence and Richfield, Morris between South Main and Ontario, and Hamilton between Ontario and Partridge. So that's some of the suggested streets that we're looking to get paved this year, go to next year, and also advocate for it in this budget. As it relates, and also as it relates to public safety, one of the things that somebody brought to my attention is that the emergency management plan that the city has with some of the universities, some of those are outdated. So we're looking to make some improvements, particularly when it comes to emergency management plan in case of emergency. What is the university is an agreement with the city, and that's not just for the university, but also for the college and other universities. There's a new cafe that will be opening up where Hudson River Cafe used to be, Cafe Camella. They were located out in Cohoes, and right now they have all their permits. They just wait for one more thing, and they should be opening sometime next week or two. So that is it right now.
Also, I don't know if you heard, one of the things you were talking about earlier with regard to the neighborhood, that area of Hudson, is some of the convenience stores are open ridiculously late. And right now the codes can't shut them down, or codes tried to see if they could cite them for being open so late, but they have that permission. They've been grandfathered into that. This might be an opportunity to look at those codes and consider not just this neighborhood, but possibly other neighborhoods as well, whether or not these stores should be open past midnight. I mean, we also have to take into account there are people who do need access to stuff in the middle of the night because maybe they come home from work at midnight. But you know, how do we balance those needs? And, you know, to what we know that last year, one of those stores was drawing underage kids in because they were serving, you know, they were selling to underage kids. And I mean, these stores are pretty, our SLA has been on top of these stores a bit in the last year, but if they're not open to begin with, it makes it much harder to do that.
Yeah, that's definitely something that been talked about, particularly when the incident that happened, I believe was on First Street, where
Yeah,
there was a few complaints
right.
about one specific store. And ultimately, I think it was between the council member and the mayor had to make a decision, and they were temporarily closed and had to go in front of planning
Right.
to make their case. And if, you know, the neighbor association feel like we need to do that to a specific store, that's something, okay.
I think what Carolyn is talking about is the hours that they're allowed to be open,
Right.
not
Like
shutting
enforcing it, gotcha.
down. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, do they need, should they be allowed to be open till 2 or 3 in the morning? Maybe if they have to be closed at 11 or 12. And that's not just one store, not just picking on a store, but
Yeah.
just asking, in general, would this be a good idea to overall have most of these stores not be allowed to be open? And it should be something that is talked about and considered. Are there people who will be impacted by that happening?
I think
To
what
what
the
extent?
USDO kind of talked about specifically is for new, like you said, for new projects or new businesses that want to open, they will have to, if they want to go past 2 o'clock, they will have to go in front of planning board.
Right.
So 2 o'clock is what's in the US.
Yeah, 2 o'clock right now, so what's in the USDO, but there are some
Still
people.
pretty late.
Yeah, there were some people that were grandfathered in with the existing, but right now, I think for any business that want to go past 2 o'clock, they will have to go in front of planning to get approved. And part of that process is getting a letter of support from the neighborhood association. So, no, that's good. And
And
I
maybe
think it really needs to be
ungrandfather
talked
them.
about like neighborhood case by case, you know, because there's some neighborhoods that they don't have these type of problems.
Right.
And I don't want, you know, kind of put out like citywide
Yeah.
legislation around it where everybody got to close that for, because
Yeah.
if you look at, let's say Buckingham Pond, there's some stores over there too that go past 4 o'clock. So, but you don't look, I mean, past 2 o'clock, but there's not a lot of crime activities that are happening. So it have to be like
Stores in
neighborhood.
Buckingham Pond? I
It's
think
like,
I'm confusing. I'm-
sorry,
You
the
mean
one
like
on
in
Weston,
Scotland?
yeah,
Yeah.
the one on Weston and by the university, closer to the
Oh,
university.
yes,
One of the-
okay,
Yeah,
okay.
one of those
I'm
stores,
sorry.
yeah.
I was just, for a minute, I was like.
Gotcha. Yeah, so one of those things,
But
just having,
I see what you mean,
neighborhood by
Yeah.
neighborhood kind of situation, but definitely that's something that.
But the other thing is too, the mayor, I mentioned earlier, the mayor has used emergency powers to deal with problem businesses, which in essence we do have in 212. I don't, you know, everyone seems to agree that's a problem business. So if it's the case that the code goes to 2 anyway, and I don't know if the grandfathering is something the city has to do or just did do in the USDO, that's sort of a reasonable question. Is grandfathering makes sense from a public policy perspective? But more than that, if we continue to have difficulties in this very specific area between Quail and Hudson Avenue, why not look at emergency action there too?
It doesn't have to be a full shutdown. It could be.
Right.
Yeah.
You could probably use that same public communication process.
Marilyn has a question. Anyone? That's the only one I can see it.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say it's kind of interesting because this whole late night thing is you read about it happening, and it's not just happening in Albany, and certainly not just in our area, Pine Hills, but some of the interesting things that people have actually found success with. And if you think back, if you were in this area and when you were in college, I mean, it's like you want to have something to do. And of course, we had the old Boulevard cafeteria, which was a great place. There was Waldorf down State Street. But anyway, one of the interesting things is that one of the cities, they've opened a big bingo hall, and the kids are going, and at 11, 12, 1 o'clock in the morning, they're playing bingo. And it's really worked out well for them. So I think in a way, you have to sort of think outside the box and think, okay, well, you know, what are things that we could do? We've lost 2 bowling alleys. We've lost we've lost 2 bowling alleys in this area. Again, that was something that you did, you know, midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, you go bowling. So we don't have that, but you know, maybe there are other kinds of things that could, you know, could be happening in our area that gets kids, you know, they want to stay together, they want to have fun, and you know, try to think what are things we could do.
And Marilyn, you touched on such a good point. And that's something I've stressed to the mayor when I met. Particularly if you're 18 to 25, there's no place for you to go. in the
Right.
city and, yeah, or to really enjoy yourself. Right now in the city, most people are going to Saratoga if you have a car. So right now, most of the locals particularly are starting to see Hudson and Hamilton as well. That's where the party is at. So they are going there to party with the college kids, and particularly, you know, it seems like, you know, the college kids can get away with whatever they want, and so many people are coming over there to party with them. So I'm not blaming the college kids, but it's just the reality of what we're seeing. You know, some of the students are not allowing some of the locals into their parties, and the locals, instead of just like packing their bags and going, they just staying there in the middle of the road. So, but
Yeah, and Owusu, just to add to that, you know, a few weeks ago, I had a call from one of my tenants, State Street. It was a student house, and locals from out of the area set up DJ equipment and threw a party in the backyard behind the house, and we had to call the police to get them removed. But I'm hearing more and more reports from, you know, the 200 something students we have in the area, that there's people from outside of Pine Hills coming in to just hang out at the 212 Deli, see what's going on, and try to get into house parties. And it's just causing a lot of conflict between everybody in the area. That's just, you know, a small sample size of a report, but I just wanted to let everyone know that.
Thank you, Justin. You know, you hear it from the police too, that a lot emanates from 212. So it kind of has the same feel to it that the problem on Lark Street had. And sometimes you have to,
Or the other store last year.
yeah,
Right up the street.
and that took a while for
Yeah.
that to pick back up. Well, it is getting somewhat late. Owusu, thank you, and thank you for staying to the end. We appreciate it.
Congratulations to Owusu on his recent engagement.
Oh, thank you.
well, welcome to the club, right?
Thanks, everyone. and good night.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh, look at all this.
Stop recording. What are you saying?
Yeah.
But you were recording.